call the February 9th Plan Commission order. Mr. Martinez, please call the roll.
Mayor Olson,
I am here.
Commissioner Hogan, Commissioner Butthart is absent, Commissioner Haley,
Here.
City Engineer Morrow,
Here.
Alderwoman Henneman,
Here.
Commissioner Leon.
Here.
We have a quorum. Please rise and join the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're all in our seats. First item on the agenda is approval of the regular meeting minutes of January 5th. Any additions or corrections? Is there a motion? Hogan?
Second.
And Haley. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is that we have no public hearings tonight. Next item is a business matter. It's Plan Development District number 37, the Rock Sports Complex. Iconica Inc. grading of the stockpiled spoiled materials on the western portion of the Ballpark Commons property. It's a site plan amendment application. Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for general location, this is the indoor sports complex. This is the Lux Golf, and this area here is the area for where the netting posts are located. And the subject area that we're talking about for this application is here, just next to the parking lot. This is the grading plan, the original grading plan for this site. So that includes landscape berm on the south and west borders of this area that is planned to be for a future expansion of this parking lot.
This is 2018 plan,
Correct.
17.
Mhm. So if we can see in the grading plan, approximately the crest of the berm was an elevation of 810 feet. So, and this is a view of the landscape plan. Okay. So during the construction activities for the netting system and the poles for the Lux Golf, this area that I show you here was used for stockpiling materials from that construction site. So, and this is a picture from December. So this is approximately the crest of the berm, and this is the stockpile materials that was placed here. So basically, these materials are close to the crest of the berm here. Here the difference is greater, but we can see that the part of the berm has been covered by these stockpile materials.
Mr. Martinez, you want some questions now, or you want to do them all at the end?
However, it's up to you, yeah.
All right, I'm going to start, and then if somebody else has questions. But relative to this spoils stockpile, was there a soil disturbance permit? This two-part question. Was there a soil disturbance permit, and was this planned and approved and noticed by the city? Mr. City Engineer.
Paul Harvey says the rest of the story. I recall when this happened, a situation is that Ballpark Commons changed consultants midstream. They did have Sigma doing work early on when they developed everything and worked with DNR. They called Foth in pretty much when Foth became a tenant up there, and so they were doing the work. So the question had been posed internally, no discussion with the city. Could they stockpile the pile there, and then could they spread it out and add the increased weight on top of the landfill? Foth not realizing the procedures, they did go through the DNR and talk to the DNR landfill folks and got the approval through DNR. So in their mind, they had approval to do it. When we found out, we informed them that no, you did not have approval to do it. So gave them the option. You can either remove it all, get back to what was approved, or B, go through the process, with your department and, get plans to leave it there permanently, and had some concerns about the berm and some other issues, obviously, that we're dealing here with tonight. So to answer your question, no, they have not received a land disturbance permit and other permits necessary to do what they've done.
I would like to mention that there's a gas line running across this area here that is also depicted on the plans here. Okay, and this is the current situation. As you can see, the elevation of this area here is approximately 809, so it's really close to the crest of the berm. And are the three options identified by staff that Glenn also mentioned. The first option will be to raise the berm to account for that, for the higher stockpile materials here. So for that, the Plan Commission will need to table the application, and the applicant will need to go back to the drawing table and submit new grading plans with the elevation of raising the berm. Second option will be to remove all the fill and to go back to the original situation of the approved grading plan. And the third option will be to adopt the resolution that is in the packet, that is to leave the situation as it is currently. For that option, staff recommends that the applicant submit a tree survey to make sure that the existing vegetation complies with the landscape plan. If not, the applicant will need to provide a revised landscape plan with replacing all the plant materials.
City engineer.
And if I could step in and throw to Paul Harder's story, the tree plan is not what is out there now. So I've actually walked the survey, or actually walked the berm. A lot of the trees died or dying. And so I have had a discussion with the Ballpark Commons folks about getting the tree survey redone and plantings. And I would say that they know that they need to get that done, but obviously they're not going to do it if one of the options is raising the berm. So I can tell you that their current trees out there do not match what we approved initially.
Him and then
I feel like this is kind of a sorry chain of events that brought us here. In our staff packet, it notes that the existing drainage patterns and surface water runoff for the area were maintained and are commensurate with the approved stormwater master plan for Ballpark Commons property. But the photo you just showed us had an awful lot of standing water, and I have to wonder, how are they complying with any erosion control measures? And is that being monitored at all right now?
Mr. City engineer.
To my knowledge, no mud is leaving the site, so it's all contained on site. Drainage patterns are still as approved in the original plan. It's all going to the basins and so forth. To my knowledge, and maybe the neighbors can correct me, but I don't believe that the drainage patterns have been changed where now, they didn't used to see drainage, now they do see drainage, those kinds of issues. We don't have those kinds of issues. It's just a matter that they raised it up. From the residents' side, the berm still looks like what it did. From the Ballpark Commons, basically the berm looks like it's disappeared. The net effect is so if you were to drive on the fill area, now those lights can shine directly over, but the height of the berm didn't change. So,
May I continue, Mayor?
sorry.
Thank you, Mr. City Engineer. I guess the bigger question I have is, regardless of if this fill was permitted by the DNR and the actions that have taken place, it seems to me that the intent was for this to basically constitute a site plan amendment, which it seems that there was no intention. I'm trying to just figure out what came first here and what the intent was. Because that's a pretty major site plan amendment, is it not? Yes, no, I would think so.
Significant faux pas.
It's a significant faux pas. That is a very, very,
I entirely disagree with the word faux pas.
Okay.
It's a substantial effort to save money on trucking that spoil off the property. That's what it was. That's what it was. So, you know, we can sugarcoat it all we want, but that's the truth. Nobody told me that, but I've been in this business a long time.
well, that's what I would think has likely happened.
Agreed.
It's a sin now, ask forgiveness later. And I'm finished, I will yield to.
I'm just going to jump in because let's not forget what the purpose of those berms are. If those were used as soccer fields, as was partially planned, then it's to deflect the noise from the people playing soccer away from the neighborhood. Actually, up and over is how that works. If it's used as a parking lot, to deflect the noise of the parking and the headlights from the cars parking. All that's gone. All that is gone. So I'm anxious to hear what the planning commission wants to do about this, but anyone else? The city attorney? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Haley first. Commissioner Haley. Commissioner Leon.
Thank you, Mayor. We have residents in attendance tonight, neighbors. This certainly impacts them.
I'm sorry.
As I was saying, we have neighbors here tonight. Some have contacted me within the past couple of days. In matters like this, I think they should always have the opportunity to speak on the matter. So I move that we suspend the rules so that residents in attendance tonight can comment publicly on it.
Seconded by Alderman Hammond. Anybody wish?
Do we need a vote on it first?
Oh, yes.
Mayor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Kerner, good evening.
Kerner, 8630 West Hawthorne Lane. You guys grasp the understanding of what's going on quite well. What I'm surprised is nobody got a notice of this in our neighborhood. Originally, we got a notice on January 30th, 2018, when this first started, when we were talking about the berm, but nobody in the neighborhood was aware of tonight's meeting. Yes, he did fill in. You guys nailed it. It was his way of getting rid of contaminated soil. It seems like he gets away with everything he wants, and you can say different, but time says no. Also, we agreed upon a 10-foot height, and I don't think that's ever been reached at all. And I think in order to get a 10-foot, you got to put a 12-foot because you're going to have settling. So let's look at that in a realistic terms. Another thing is, when they did that back there, they disrupted stuff, and there was methane coming out of those big tubes, 3-foot diameter tubes. We had to call the fire department one time because you could smell the methane when you walked back there. We even gave directions to the site and for the fire department, but they decided to go the other way. But they did come and address it, and they took a meter reading, and they said, yeah, we have methane coming out of there because the lid wasn't on there right. My other question is this going to be just dirt back there? There'll be no gravel or nothing? Is that what my understanding was originally?
The proposal for the applicant is just to leave it as it is now.
But you can say one thing, but he does another. Because if you get gravel back there, you're going to get dust. And then you're going to get that, when your tires at night, when they go across gravel, it makes noise. So yes, let's keep that in its present form as dirt. And they did compact that down quite a lot. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, our backyard is like hell during the summer. It is. It's, you know, I can't imagine a new family moving in and trying to put their kids to bed at night. The noise is just unbearable. I thank you guys for what you did with the movie theater. Not a problem. Don't even know what goes on right now. If we can address the rest of that, and I know it has nothing to do with the berm tonight, but the sound system. Again, you guys seem to have a handle on it. Let's move forward and get that berm up to the height it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. John?
John Pleva, 8640 West Hawthorne Lane. I literally just walked back there last night. As I was walking along would be like the north edge, there was water bubbling out of the ground, going down into the, we'll call it the park or the forest, whatever. Before it was so wet and you could walk over the top of that, as I walked over the top, there was so much debris in there from pieces of metal, pieces of rebar, little pieces of plastic everywhere, all sorts of contaminated soil, and it's just spread out all over the place. When I bought that property back in the day, they told me nothing was ever going to be put here. I get it. I love the whole process up there. I like what they're doing. I don't like the noise, and I don't like that they're trying to get away with something here. That berm, I agree with Mr. Kerner here. I don't think that berm was ever at 10 feet. I think they started at 10 feet, but by the time that thing settled, it was probably closer to 7.5. It was proposed how nice it was going to look, how many trees we're going to have. It's going to be a very nice, beautiful thing. Oh, it looks like a goat patch. It's full of weeds, it's full of dead trees, and it's full of, I don't even know. I mean, I would invite you to take a walk up there and wear some boots because it's going to be sloppy, but take a walk through there and just see all the things that you see, all the pieces of metal, all the plastic, all the garbage, just spread out all over the place. What are we doing up there? And I know it's not you guys. I know that he's trying to get things covered up and so on and so forth, but that is an eyesore. Also, I believe that berm needs to be raised or that stuff needs to be taken out, one or the other, and then trees put back in and made to where it looks, because everything else around there is starting to look really nice. We take pride in our yards in there, and then you look at something like this and it's like, I'm not even going to start talking about all the weeds that come from there that have mitigated into my yard. And, I'm trying to keep up with, how it is. You try to have a nice yard, and it's just full of weeds in that area. And it's disheartening. So raise the berm. Something needs to be done. Please, every one of you people, please take a walk through there and just look at how much garbage is spewed all over that area. You'd be shocked. How would you like that if that was in your backyard? I don't think you'd be very happy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pleva.
Dale Kerner, 8630 West Hawthorne Lane. I just want to piggyback on what John said. It's a weed patch up there. It gets bad. I've called the city so many times about it being cut, and finally my good friend Jesse took care of it for me several times. Got the right people out there. I mean, John and I, we cut our grass at least once a week, And yeah, maybe he can get away with it every other week, but it's probably every month and a half he cuts or something. He doesn't take care of it. And, it was open field before, but we have more weeds now than ever. We're trying to, and the reason for it, I don't know, but when the open field was there, I had no problem. I sprayed my little area and it was fine. And he should be able to make that look like grass instead of a weed patch. It is terrible. It is. Thank you again.
Thanks again, Dale.
Dana Gint, 9011 West Hawthorne Lane. I don't agree with the direction of that picture, actually. I don't think that's pointing southwest. I think that's pointing northwest, by the way. I'm quite confident. I think that's the corner behind, I'm pretty confident. The picture that I sent you was southwest, by the way. And then could you go back to the picture that shows the berms and so if it's going to be just gravel, then why are there parking spots like designated, like the other one? If we could go to the next one. You know what I mean? Why is there lines drawn like it's going to be a paved parking lot like that? If that's not what's being proposed. That was what was proposed in 2017 and 18. And I do remember at some point them discussing gravel or paving or something like that, which I understand they're concerned about this noise and dust. So that's one of my concerns. And obviously the neighbors were not notified. Dale has a letter that he received back in 2018. Actually, I think I received that also, regarding specifically about this berm, that there would be a neighborhood meeting specifically about this berm. Why are we not having a similar meeting? That's not acceptable, that you are doing things that impact this neighborhood without letting us know. I think what needs to happen is the berm be rebuilt and the trees. It's not one or the other. We were promised a 10-foot berm with 93 trees. We have no berm, and there's 29 dead trees last time I counted, and that was in August. So that I didn't even take an inventory in 2019 or 20 when things were dying. And then another concern regarding the permit from the DNR, was there also authorization given from the county? The county pays $27,000 a year to help maintain that methane system. The city's TID is $3.7 million. So for the city not to be involved in this whole stockpile of 35 feet of dirt by 60 feet by 120 feet is very alarming to me on this methane system. It goes all over in there. And so I think that final row of parking should be removed and the new 10-foot berm be put there with the trees. And then you can intersperse the trees and have maybe a better orientation and better ability to mow it. So I would be interested in finding out why there wasn't any county authority involved in that. And then when was there a public meeting regarding revising this whole berm thing? So it's something they just did, just because they were doing cost-cutting measures, as Mayor Olson mentioned, that it's a lot cheaper to just bring in dirt and spread it out and not think about that there were promises made and that there was a berm plan in place, and they're just ignoring that. So, and I don't think, it's not up to me, but I don't know if a fence would be appropriate in this location, but that's something that could be considered. But obviously, I think that should involve the neighborhood meeting. That should not be up to me. I would, if it was me, I would want the berm put black. And I have some paperwork in 2019. If this is a meeting, I think it's January. It's 2018, sorry. It says here, any exceptional, extraordinary, or unusual circumstances or conditions applying to the lot, parcel, structure, or use intended use that do not apply generally to other properties or uses in the same district. The land north of Rawson is an exceptional circumstance because it is an existing landfill. This project is repurposing the landfill as a sports facility that will benefit the entire community. I'm pretty sure if you asked all the neighbors in this neighborhood, or even people within 2 miles of this facility, it is not benefiting the community because of the noise specifically. It is a nice facility. It just does not need to be that loud. It also goes into here, degree of noncompliance with the requirement allowed by the special exceptions. The degree of noncompliance will be minimal given the large size of the overall property. Okay, they're giving them the exceedance on all decibel levels. Pretty sure that's non-compliant and that's not minimizing the impact. The final thing is any negative effect upon adjoining properties, the response. Any negative effects, this is the developer's response, any negative effect might be noise and light pollution to the residential neighborhoods to the west. These effects will be mitigated by a wooded berm that is going to be 150 feet wide along the west end of the development. In the end, it will be likely that the neighbors will find that they like the development much more than what they have with the existing landfill. What do you guys think about that? That's a good one. Than they currently live next to. So I just want to bring that to your attention, that that is the pattern that we have been tolerating for pretty much since 2013, and it needs to stop. There needs to be proper mitigation done for the noise, and the berm needs to be built. Promises were made. They need to start to be upheld. So I appreciate your help. Thank you.
A couple of, is there a motion to return to regular order? Anybody else? Is there a motion to return open, to regular order? Hogan and Leon. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. You had the floor before, so I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the neighbors who commented on it. Just a comment first. I don't see the applicant, the property owner, or the alder for the district here tonight. I would ask, for the record, that should we table it, which that's the way I'm leaning at this point, that all be present at the next meeting, and that this be set up as public comment should we table again, so that notifications are sent out to the neighbors per code, and that the three that I just listed, I'll get to hear the comments of the neighbors in person and can do things to mitigate their concerns. I will say one thing. I do live within 2 miles. And while I do understand your concerns and I do want to help you to mitigate them, I do believe that this ballpark commons is good for the community. I do hear the noise, not as loudly as you. I won't dispute that. But I do believe that there is a way to mitigate the impact on you so that it will benefit the area. I do walk that area. I don't go quite as close as you described, but I will. But I do walk there, and I see the things that you're talking about. And I do believe, I do certainly agree that they need to be better managed and that there needs to be more attention to the concerns and the complaints that you're lodging. You listed several of them. I won't go into detail on all of them, but good neighbors do those sorts of things. So I truly hope, and all this is for the record, that the applicant and the property owner in particular are here the next time we discuss this. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, let's do a couple things. Well, you took one of the two things that I was going to put on the record, which number one was no applicant is present, no landowner is present, which to me, it says a whole lot. The comments from both Mr. Kerner and Ms. Gint about notifications, this is a site plan amendment, typically does not get a neighborhood notice. But in the past, your alderperson took care of that. He may have done that on his own, but it's not required. But what I'm saying is, it's the responsibility of your elected representative to take care of those kind of things. So there's that. Mr. City Engineer.
Just to clarify, I don't want to leave the wrong taste in folks' mouth. It's not that city staff, if you will, forgave the process. The fact is, we said you need to come get this taken care of. So we said you got to do something with it. Let's go through the parking. I do recall through the conversation. I think I recall. I don't know how the final verdict was as far as documentation, but they talked about using this area as overflow parking. Grass field overflow parking, that was supposed to be the idea. If I recall right, they weren't going to pave it, but there was be a place for parking. So I think that's why you see parking spaces on there in that drawing. Having said that, I would suggest to you that or at least I would hope if we raise the berm, and I personally think it's a good idea, we not say 10 feet, because we had a administrative nightmare trying to figure out what is 10 feet. When you have an undulating topography that's sloped, how do you measure the 10 feet? Is it from the center line of where it was before the fill and then after the fill and so forth, or do you measure it from the uphill side or the downhill side? So I would suggest to you that it sounds like we're going to table this, but we come back with an elevation. You know, the berm shall be at this elevation as opposed to a 10 feet. That way we could go out and check it, because right now I can't check it. All I can check is based on the previous topography. I did send staff out to survey the top of the berm. It has settled, so I would have to believe that when they built the berm, it was probably in compliance. I don't have the exact numbers, but if I recall, the berm has settled at least 6 inches, at most a foot in a few spots. But for the most part, it's it's within reason of what you would expect for that much fill over 3 or 4 winters to settle. So, but having said that, I do like the idea of just setting an elevation. It shall be this elevation as the final berm. Debris. I have not walked the site, but my staff has, and they said, yeah, there's a lot of just junk from construction debris, possibly even landfill stuff. So I would also suggest that if we were to go ahead and approve this meeting or next meeting, whenever, I would ask for at least 4 to 6 inches of clean fill over the top of it so that they can, I would imagine they probably haven't planted grass because they had this process going on. Why go through the effort to restore it if they just have to dig it up or do whatever with it? But I would suggest that we require them to do a clean fill so it is a nice smooth surface. You don't have the junk, the debris, and so forth. As far as the fence goes, doesn't matter to me. I would personally think that would be tough to put along the center line because you've got trees and such there. I mean, which would have maybe you'd have to offset the fence one side or the other, and then it'd be an extra tall fence that might be extra ugly depending on which side you put it on to have to look at. So then you have to maintain it. Then we're constantly on them about, this board is broken or whatever. I would much rather see not only trees that we have there, but maybe even increased vegetation with maybe deciduous and evergreen bushes and such. 4 to 6 inches. We got plenty of buckthorn we can put around there. Stuff grows pretty quick. But yeah, obviously not buckthorn. That's the joke. But we need something that grows quickly, but is a full tree. I would suggest that the trees that they have going up would be nice, but I think that we need more shrubbery and just dense vegetation. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Couple of things are troubling me here. One, the discussion that there may potentially be waste in this material. That stuff's never supposed to see the sunlight. So if it is, that's something the DNR should be on. I can only guess it either came in off-site or it was brought up through the drilling machines that they use for the posts. And from my experience with this facility, that's not supposed to be above ground. So we ought to be looking at that. I think we also need to get a handle on what is it to become. I mean, it's bad enough that they have to go in there and tear it apart and rebuild it, but are we designing it as a parking lot? Is it going to be an athletic field that they park on occasionally? That can be problematic because it ruts the grass, and grass doesn't make for a really good parking surface. So we ought to know what it's going to be and redesign this berm. I'm not saying to tear it all out and do it, but let's let the applicant come back at us and say, here's what we can do. Here's where we can fill more. Here's what it would look like. Here's the additional trees. The fact that we've got that many dead trees out there is kind of scary. But they should be coming back with a proposal that truly screens this area. And I think for us to look at it, we need to know what it's going to be. Either it's a parking lot or it's an athletic field. If it's an athletic field, well, this grading isn't acceptable. It need to be finish graded, and there need to be topsoil on it if you're going to try and grow grass. So they're into some costs otherwise. I mean, I guess that's why I'd like to see their plan, because even to come in here, regrade this, and put some topsoil down, it's just going to get taller. The elevation's coming up. So we got to be asking the applicant what they can do. Come back with the solution. They know what we want. Bring it to us, and we'll act on it. Thank you.
So I'm going to add a couple on to you, Commissioner Haley, and you're the landscape expert, but we've got waste that's visible. That waste is denser than would be the topsoil and the grass. So what happens when we get a winter like this where we get hard freeze and then thaws? That stuff goes right up through the topsoil and it's now on top of the grass. So unless we put 1.5 foot topsoil on there, this isn't an athletic field anymore. You can't. There's going to be metal poking up, and so. But I tell you what, if I ever go to an event there that requires me to park on that, I'm not going to do that because there's going to be metal poking through my tires. So that's one big issue that I had. the other thing is if we raise the berms, which I think needs to be done, you need to help me with this because I don't believe the trees will get enough water to maintain themselves. Let me finish my one other thing and then off we go. As for the height measurement, you know, I think the height measurement needs to be done from the residence side, not the building, not the development side. And we talked about this at length, I think, when we first went down this path at the Plan Commission, that we wanted it to be the average height across the entire berm. But again, I understand your issue with how do you pick a spot? What's your reference point? I get that. I'm not so sure, I'm not a resident there, but I'm not so sure I'm as concerned about it being 10 feet or 11 feet or 9 feet. I'm concerned about it blocking, doing the purpose it's intended for. So, Kevin, you want, Mr. City Engineer?
I do recall that conversation about the average height, but that was because of this issue. We had trouble, so we fixed that for the south berm on around the Mandel property. So that's where that discussion came up at. But as far as the average height, from the resident side, the height of the berm didn't change except for the settling that I just talked about. But the height of the berm basically disappeared from the ballpark. And that's where I think the issue is that for any cars and everything, you want that to be at least 10 feet or whatever to block, so forth.
Okay. Excuse me, Patty. Commissioner Hogan.
I'm just in agreement with what everybody has said here tonight. The thing that I'm upset about, like Commissioner Leone, is that the ballpark people are not here. And I want to make sure that they address us with all these issues. And I don't want them coming here on that night that we have them here and not being able to give us answers. Let them know what we are asking and what the people in the neighborhood are complaining about. I want to know I want to have some answers addressed at that meeting, our next meeting that they're going to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to address your points. The berm needs to be taller. It needs to be measured from the parking lot side. I don't think you're even going to want to go in and tear out the berm. What they're probably going to need to do is widen it at the base into the parking lot and bring it up there. But again,
I'm sorry, Kevin, I turned you off. But I did want to interrupt you. I misspoke. What I meant was it had to be the advantage of the residents. You're absolutely correct. You have control over the height, the base measurement at the parking lot. So I didn't want anybody thinking I was trying to do that. And now I got to put your mic back on. There you go.
and then relative to the trees, well, that's a matter of selecting trees that can grow in that environment, and they are there. And our ordinance, I believe we're scrubbing it out now with the rewrite, but required previously irrigation systems to maintain these plants. That's what we've been doing everywhere, because this is oftentimes what happens. They get planted and a year or two later, they're dead. We've had discussions about whether that needs to be an automatic system or whether there just needs to be a quick and easy way to get water on these. It's been done with water trucks, but the burden of making those trees grow falls to the applicant. They buy them, they pick them, they got to make them grow. And I don't think it'll be a problem with getting too high. Again, the berm is going to have to do a lot of it, and then the trees are sort of placed strategically through there. So it can be done. They just need to do it. Thank you.
Mr. City Engineer.
Could I have Commissioner Haley's comment on other shrub vegetation kinds of things that would be most appropriate to mix in amongst the trees? Could I have is there a directive so we can talk about having more vegetation amongst the trees? How would you describe I'm going to say shrubs, dense shrubs? Or just leave it up to their landscaper to propose something?
The latter.
Okay.
Again, this is their problem to solve. Come in, show us what they're gonna do, the long-term use of this, how they're gonna do, they know the issue with the neighbors, they know what they agreed to up front. Let them come in and propose what they're gonna do, and it's probably a combination of lots of different trees, shrubs, they could even do native grasses. And the fact that I'm hearing there's problems with weeds, that's not a good thing either. So let's let them come back with the solution, and hopefully it will meet with our satisfaction.
Okay, any other commissioner? So somebody make a motion.
I'll move to table. Go ahead.
Like to have added to that conditionally that whenever, whether it's next meeting or several meetings from now, that there be public notice and there be public comment allowed at that meeting so that neighbors can address their concerns with, ideally with the applicant and the property owner present, and I would hope the alder as well.
Okay.
Are you amenable to that?
I am.
I
Addition?
got a few questions regarding that. First of all, which property line and how far for the notice?
Whatever the standard, I think it's 500 feet, but I could be wrong on that.
It's 200.
I would defer to staff on that.
Depends on what we're noticing.
How about this?
Regular.
The same standard that was used when the project was first proposed in 2018, whatever that distance was.
But you got to remember, the parcel extends all the way to 76th Street.
Understood. But when this project was first proposed 5 years ago, my math's right, whatever that public notice was at the time, I would think would remain appropriate. But I would also defer to staff on that.
So one comment. So this is processed as a site plan amendment because it is the alteration of the burn that is associated with permitted use, that is the sports facilities. Because in this district, sports facilities is a permitted use. So that's why the public hearing was not required. So my question for city attorney, if can we require a public hearing for this application that is associated with a permitted use?
It would not be a public hearing. Thought with regard to it occurring at a subsequent meeting is that the commission would have to move to suspend the rules. In the perfect world, that should occur at that meeting. And you do have 5 of 6 commissioners plus mayor present. And that was unanimous. In these unusual times, perhaps a motion to suspend the rules for the return of this item at a specified meeting date to allow public comments to be received at that meeting on this subject. Concern is, are you then somehow setting a precedent that whenever somebody wants such a situation, flip side is, this is relatively unusual facts on this matter.
So Commissioner Leon, you have the
I'll
floor.
defer to city engineer first, and then I have a question for city attorney.
Oh, but you don't want to hear from me. Okay.
I think this is somewhat different than most other things that come up, and there's sometimes controversial in the fact that public hearing, if I'm not mistaken, was required when they did whatever they did to create the berm. That was part, so that would be why this is different, because they didn't comply with it. They're asking to change something that initially required a public hearing. So I'm sympathetic to the public hearing part. What concerns me is the fact that, like the mayor said, this parcel goes to 76th Street. I know Greendale residents have their own issues with this facility, but this doesn't affect them at all. This is really just for the residents to the west, not even to the south. So I would pick a number, 300 feet or between 200 to 500 feet. And that would be, send a letter. Sounds like it's not a public notice, but at least send a letter that will appear on this plan commission. And we just have to understand that one of us will offer to suspend the rules, and hopefully we agree to do that.
Which is darn close to, I'm just going to go, which is darn close to what I was going to suggest to you. Let's get it to the Whitnall View subdivision, maybe to Velo Village, even though they're not affected, and make it just a letter just notifying people. Because we get into statutory notice, I see what's going to happen here is the motion needs to be tabled to the call of the chair, because we don't know when the applicant will come back with a plan that's worth talking about. And once we have that plan in hand, if it's a public notice and a public hearing, we got, depending on what class it is, 45 days, and it starts getting in all of that foolishness. So by foolishness, I mean procedural issues, not, it's election season. That'll be the next flyer. I agree 100% with what your desire is. It's the implementation that I have an issue with. You have the floor, even though I took it.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, what I could have said better is what I'm really looking for is public notice. I'm fully confident that the residents that we have here will follow things well enough to know to come out to those meetings and that we can suspend rules like we did tonight. But there are other neighbors, and to your point, they are mostly due west of the property. So some way of publicly notifying those other residents so that they can come here to be present for the meeting and speak on the issue they want. So that's what I'm looking for a way to do. And again, I defer to staff on what the correct direction and distance is for that and how to go about it so we don't set a precedent that will cause us problem on future applications. But looking for all their neighbors to know, hey, on whatever date, this topic's going to come up again, and I can't say enough that I really want the applicant and the property owner to be here for that.
So your motion, Commissioner, is to table the matter to the call of the chair with the requirement that the applicant is present to present complete plans for not only the grading of the final grading of the site, restoration of the site, and improvement to the berm such that it is 10 feet.
So the motion wasn't mine, it was Alderwoman Hanneman's. I was seconding it and adding the notification, and then, of course, we can suspend when we're there. I think you covered everything City
I didn't
Engineer
get to
Commissioner
the-
Healy brought up.
I didn't get to the
But yeah,
notification.
the motion was made by Alderwoman Hanneman initially, and I seconded. I'm okay with all that, but
All that's, well, it's not convoluted, but it's long because I want to get everything that everybody wanted in there. And I think it's important, you know me, I don't like long motions. That opens up all kinds of issues. But this one needs to be specific so everybody knows. So let me try it again. So Alderwoman, is your motion to table to the call of the chair and to require the applicant to complete appropriate detailed plans on restoration of the fields and their future use, and plans for heightening the berm sufficient to block the view and noise to the neighbors. And I did, that's part of restoration. And to provide detailed planting plans for the entire berm. We'll get that on the other side. Is that a good motion?
and I second.
All okay now? And again, I don't like long motions. And the understanding is that staff will notify Whitnall. And we just take the GIS system, draw a circle around it, print off the list and off through go. Mr. City Attorney.
Thought with regard to the notice is the adjoining area properties that are served by the, or intended to be served by the berm, as opposed to Velo Village, et cetera.
Sure.
And number two, I have no detailed facts on what public hearing occurred back in 2018, but I am sure that would be as part of the PDD creation or amendment, and the planner is nodding his head.
Correct, yeah, Plan Development District amendment for several changes to the PDD. So it
Okay.
was, the burn was one of the items, of several items. But this is not amending the PDD, this,
Right.
this site plan amendment.
Right.
Okay, anything else on the motion? Don't anybody ask for it to be read back? Okay, on that motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On that motion, it's understood as implied if the developer and the applicant do not appear, then the item does not get heard.
Understood.
Okay. Is that clear, regular? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Dana, this isn't appropriate, but I'll read it later. Yeah, okay. Next item is the Unified Development Rewrite Task Force. This is an information session. Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, good evening, thank you. In the last workshop, we used an approach of two sessions. First session with the staff, I did a brief presentation and presented the questions from the consultant. And then we held a second session with the consultant. So this approach was productive, but it was some kind of redundant. So the approach this time is different. So we are providing the draft articles with the memo from the consultant, so you can have it ahead of time. And in the next Plan Commission meeting, we will hold a session with the consultant with a full presentation, so we don't duplicate information. So that's the intent with this workshop this time. I'm happy to get any questions that you may have now that I can maybe I can answer, or I can forward to the consultant so they can provide a detailed answer during the at the next meeting.
So you're not looking for answers tonight to the questions?
I mean, if I may answer the question, but if more requires a more in-depth discussion, we can hold for the next session
We
with
got
the
eight,
consultant.
we got 8 questions here. Commissioner Leon. You guys are getting away from pushing buttons. Okay, go ahead.
So similar to when I motioned before the last agenda item, I'm going to move again that we suspend the rules on this informational session to allow members of the public who did address concerns to me about what was discussed here in the, I don't want to use the right term here, the information session for the UDO rewrite, so that they can raise questions that can be brought back to the consultant. So with that, I move that we suspend the rules to allow members of the public present to speak on this matter.
Yeah, it's got to be on these sections.
Okay, yeah, I mean, suspending the rules, I think that's always the case, right? It's going to be on the agenda item, so on these two articles, 8 and 9.
Is there a second? Second by Alderwoman Hanneman. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, Ms. Gint, understand, we have not talked about this. So let's understand that and keep the questions and the comments relative to that. Ms. Gint.
I don't.
It is now.
It is? Okay. Dana Gint, 9011 West Hawthorne Lane. I appreciate you suspending the rules to let me comment, which is my first concern because obviously the UDO impacts the entire city and there really has not been public input allowed regarding this huge impact on the entire city. I know for the comprehensive master plan, there were 19 neighborhood meetings. I don't think there's been any neighborhood meetings. And specifically, when you're rewriting the UDO, it does impact the entire city. So it should be in a city newsletter, maybe once or twice, to actually involve the public. I feel like it's almost intentional that the public has not been involved in this. And that's very concerning to me, since it is very impactful for the entire city, relating to all the ordinances which impact every aspect of our lives, unfortunately. And then the other question is, I was going through the draft ordinance, and there's no, unless you go print all the existing ordinances to figure out, to track changes or to figure out what is changing. Like I noticed, like there's some sort of administrative review for up to buildings with 100,000 square feet. Oh my gosh, I did a real quick research. I think most municipalities have like an administrative review for buildings that are 15 to 18,000 square feet. So why is a 100,000 square foot building being even considered as part of some sort of administrative review? So I guess that's pretty much my concern. The conditional use thing, I think, should take a tremendous amount of information to review that. And I really want to be able to compare what's going on now. So is it changing from a special use to a conditional use, number one? Is that, I don't know if you want to answer my questions right now, if you want to wait. And then the other question,
State law.
okay. And then the other question is about building, there's some sort of zoning, it's not a, so I'm confused. Is there a zoning administrator? Because it talks about zoning, and I'm like, do we even have is that planning and zoning? Is that your title? Because I know you're a planning, department, but I know there's a board of zoning appeals, but the UDO talks about a zoning.
Yeah, the zoning administrator is in the city development department. I am the interim zoning administrator.
Okay.
Normally the planning manager.
So that is your department, is the planning, it's planning and zoning is one thing, because that's not very clear in the way it's written. It's very confusing to me that I didn't know what zone, I thought there was some new department or some new personnel and stuff like that. So I'd really appreciate if this could be put in the city newsletter to actually allow for public meetings. And I'm very concerned about the pursuit of having so much administrative approvals for things that are so impactful for the neighborhood. And obviously, my major concern is the noise. So I'd really like you to put that in the ordinances also. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Is there a motion to return?
So moved.
Second by Alderwoman. Patty, that's going way back. Sorry to insult you that way. Commissioner Hogan. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, back to the agenda. Regular, you want to ask the questions, or what do you want to do?
No, unless, if you have any questions.
If we have any.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I do have a question. How did that 100,000 square foot get in there? I don't remember the conversation on that.
Well, according to
Just if you
the,
remember, I don't want to make a big
Right.
deal out of it because
Right.
it'll get changed anyway, so.
according to the diagnostic report that the consultant prepared, one of the recommendation was for permitted use, when it's permitted out of right, to allow for administrative approval by the zoning administrator. So it doesn't have to go to the plan commission. So when we were drafting the ordinance, it was not clear which site plans will go to the plan commission and which site plan will go to administrative review. So that's why that threshold of the 100,000 square feet to determine either administrative review or plan commission review.
So,
And it's not that we are deciding that. That is actually a question for policy direction to determine if that is appropriate or not.
so just so we can try to allay some of the rumors and the misinformation and confusion, in fairness. So if there's a proposal, let's use the business park for an example, or the corporate park, or whatever. And someone comes in and applies for what is a permitted use. They have the right to build that building. it needs a site plan approval.
Correct.
But they have a right to do that. The proposal is that the zoning administrator can approve a building by right up to 100,000 square feet,
Correct.
provided it fits on the site. And
Correct. Yeah, because the site plan is just to confirm compliance with the ordinance. There is no discretion
right,
for a site.
it does or it doesn't.
Right, correct.
It's binary. Mr. City Attorney.
Why do you draw the line at 100,000 square feet if it's permitted and they've got to give it to them? Why don't you make it 1,000,000 square feet?
Well, that was a number that,
Well,
like, for example, recent projects like, I don't know, Saputo, for example, would be over that threshold. So that would require to go to Plan Commission. But a site plan for us, I don't know, a small retail standalone building will not need to go to the Plan Commission.
Okay, well, we're receiving this information. We're going to review it. Alderwoman Hannon,
Thank you,
and
Mayor.
then the city engineer.
And I had sent notification, I am unable to attend our next February Plan Commission meeting. So I just have a couple of very high-level comments, and I'm not necessarily looking for answers, but I just kind of want to let my colleagues here know a couple of thoughts that I have, and maybe it can come up in conversation then at that meeting. So I'll start with Article 8. And one of the things on page 10 of 16, as we're looking at some of the street design requirements and required street design elements, I just want to make sure that there's nothing new here. And if implementation of this particular chart would leave us with a lot of legal nonconformance in the city. You know, so,
Yeah. The intent of this table here is to be consistent with to the comprehensive plan
As
that
it-
has some standards for street design.
Okay, thank you. And on page 12 of 16, number 2, item C, where we talk about costs of installing water mains, laterals, water systems, or wells. And then in D, we tell that a subdivider or condominium developer shall install water mains. So that seems to be overriding the wells that we mentioned in item C.
But that
I
would,
don't even know, do we still allow wells
yeah,
in a subdivision?
not in a subdivision though.
I have a well too.
But
But, you know,
that
we talk.
predates the UDO.
Right, but we talk about a subdivider or condominium developer shall assume the cost of installing the water mains, laterals, water system purchases, or wells within the proposed subdivision.
City engineer.
So I suggest to you in regular, making sure I'm saying this correctly, but a subdivider could be someone who just does a CS, like a 3-lot CSM. So you can have someone like down Oakwood Road, literally miles away from a water main who wants to do a 3-lot CSM, they could do a well. But if you're going to do a condo development or apartments or, you know, a dense subdivision, you need to have public water supply.
Okay, so item D does not contradict item C?
I don't read it as a contradiction.
Okay. I did, but. On page 13 of 16, item E, when we talk about a density bonus, shall be as determined by the Common Council and shall be directly tied to the amount of land area placed in a conservation easement. But then down on number 6, we identify other as approved by the zoning administrator. I do feel that a density bonus should be determined by the Common Council by Plan Commission recommendation and ultimately by the Common Council. And then item 15 of 6, on page 15 of 16 in that section, 15-8-10. As a condition of approval of a final plat of a subdivision, the developer shall dedicate land for park and recreational purposes. I don't know, is that a policy decision that the council has made? I know we've been making it a best practice of asking developers to grant us some easement or, dedicate a small mini park, but I don't know that that is codified policy at this point, is it?
In the current UDO, if a site is designated in the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan as a future park, then yes, it's a requirement to do the dedication, and the subdivider may be compensated with the fair price of the land. Yeah.
Okay.
Only if that apply, if there is designation.
Okay, and I think that caveat needs to be in here because as I read it, it says, as a condition of the approval of a final subdivision plat, the developer shall dedicate.
Okay.
So I think that's something we want to be careful about. Thank you. And,
There it is.
follow up to that. I would yield to the commissioner.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow on, not to Alderwoman Hanneman's last question, but the one prior for E, density bonus. And forgive me for not fully knowing the authority of BZBA, I should, but does that currently reside with the BZBA, like that condition, or is that completely separate? I think it's separate, but I want to clarify.
The current process for like a density increase is a special use application that goes to Plan Commission and Common Council. That's
Okay,
the current
it does not go before BZBA at this
For
point.
BCBA, no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
So you want more work?
Well, I mean, anyway, I'll leave that alone, but thank you for clarifying. I'm good.
Alderwoman Hanneman?
If I may then move on to Article 9 on page 5 of 28, when it addresses item B, a Historic Preservation Commission. While we do not have that in the city of Franklin, my question would be, will our Historical Society be bound by this? Because they are a separate and individual 501c3. So that's just something for discussion at that point in time, I think. And landmark site, historic district designation criteria on page 7 of 28. I think that as this is discussed, a sidebar conversation with the Parks Commission might be in order, as they frequently consider, landmark type monument benches or flagpoles or this or that. So I just want to keep that Parks Commission up to date on what's going on there.
Alderwoman, that's not what this is. This is designated sites for preservation.
Okay.
So if somebody's,
Well, frequently those are in parks.
well, if
But
we go down on Oakwood Road and somebody finds a house that at some point the Godsels once owned for 22 minutes and want to make that a historical society, that's what this is.
But that does, if the Historical Society would want to take on more land, I think that this might.
Well, this whole subject has got to be very carefully considered, because if we use the term that the Historical Society takes it over, the Historical Society doesn't have the money to buy nor maintain much more than what they have now. And what they have now is owned by the city.
Well, and I'm
So-
truly not looking for an answer that's looking for a problem. But I think it's something just to be aware of.
Well, I got to tell you, I will tell you that these historical designations and landmarks have all got to be very carefully considered and not just glossed over because there's huge implications to this stuff. I think Alderman Hogan or Commissioner Hogan was on the council at the time when we had a discussion about a historical preservation commission. It was not pretty. It was not pretty.
Well, that's all I have for now, just some very high-level things that popped
Thank
out
you, and I
at me.
apologize for interrupting. I get hot on those kind of things. Mr. City Engineer.
So I don't have a lot of comments because this consultant allowed me and my staff to basically sit down and go through these sections since we use them a lot and so forth. However, during that discussion, I did ask for one thing, and I don't see it in here. If you notice in the first couple of pages, it's got questions for task force discussion. Whether you want to have it tonight or just make sure that we do have a discussion sometime, I want to discuss the width of roads. We have very limited budget to pave every year. We have people that complain about speeders. We have issues with, trying to, again, snowplow and all that kind of stuff. Is it appropriate to have the really wide streets that we do everywhere in Franklin? Could it be maybe in subdivisions we really consider maybe having no parking or parking on one side? It gives you skinnier streets. It gives you people slowing down because their streets are smaller. We just had a neighborhood where we talked about trying to increase the width to 20 feet, and we got some pushback from the neighbors. So we have very wide highways on streets that only have a few homes on. Is that appropriate? I would suggest to you that it wouldn't hurt my feelings if we decide that maybe we want to see, smaller streets on the areas where it's not, there, corridors or something like that we really want to have the traffic go. So that's probably a bigger discussion than right now, but I would like you to start thinking about it. And it would save me a lot of money if all of our streets were a lot skinnier than what they are, because it just costs a lot more to maintain those. And again, the speeding issue, almost rarely does a month go by at Board of Public Works when we don't have people complain about the speed. One of the calming issues is you can make the streets smaller. So I'll throw that out there and to chew on, and maybe we don't need a discussion tonight, but I would like to see that listed as a question for the task force. I would think it would go in these two sections. Maybe you should plan it for another section, but I do recall asking that needs to be discussed as a larger issue. And maybe the answer is we do want big wide streets, but we have to live with the speeding and the funding. So
I'm going to offer a comment on that, and then Commissioner Leon. I'm good with a conversation about street widths. However, in as much as I'm older and I've got on my street, which is a cul-de-sac, I've got several senior residents. I get concerned every day when I drive up my street and there's one car parked on one side and one car parked on the other, and they're not quite parked the way you learned in driver's ed. So I can get through, but our ambulance couldn't. That's what the problem, that's the big issue for me. And I don't know that we'll ever fix
maybe
this.
you only have one parking on one side.
Who's going to enforce it? These are all, and for those of you that are going to put a campaign flyer out about this, it's all a conversation that needs to be had frankly and with candor. And sorry, but as the people in this audience know, that's me. So I go to these mayor's meetings every month, and every month, every one of them says, boy, I wish we could do a better job with controlling speed in the subdivision. And it's the nature of human beings these days. So, but trying to fix it, I'm all for. Commissioner Leon?
Button, there we go, now.
See how that works?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was going to have one comment and one question to the city engineer, but you raised another question, so I'll throw one more. I now have two questions. My comment is, and we have discussed this during these meetings before about narrower streets. I remember reading an article, so I don't presume to be an expert, but narrow streets just in general tend to slow down speeds. And I know that was implicit in everything the city engineer, so I'm just kind of, in layman's way, reaffirming it. My question to the city engineer, though, is, and I think we have talked about this in previous meetings, how many streets or what percentage of streets do we have control of that over? And the only reason I ask is you were talking about some of the thoroughfares and wide highways. I just want to understand, and I'll take a step back, understanding you didn't want to get into too much detail tonight, but, just narrowing it to where, maybe this is implicit, but where we have control over it versus DOT.
Oh, you're asking city-controlled streets versus Milwaukee County or state DOT?
Right.
I don't know that offhand. I can tell you, the state is Loomis and State Trunk Highway 100. I think those are the only two. The county is Rawson, 27th. What's that? Yeah, Ryan, part of Ryan. And let's see what.
North Cape?
Yeah, Forest Home, North Cape.
No, North Cape's ours.
You're right. 92nd? No.
There's a limited number of county and
Yeah.
very few.
Yeah, for the most part. So our major are Drexel, Putes, even College is a county road. So, yeah.
Yeah, so again, just kind of getting at it's
76
the
is
neighborhood
county,
streets that
yeah.
we're really trying to
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about, when you go into a large subdivision, there's like the main trunk, and then, but all those other little roads that peel off, I think those could be parking one side or maybe even no parking. I think that needs to be a discussion. That would just, you're basically paving 3 lanes. If all my roads, if I could snap my finger and make them, a third skinnier, that makes my paving budget go a lot further each year.
So my last question, I think it's really more rhetorical, but maybe not. The mayor addressed who's going to enforce it. I mean, I think as long as it's a public street, the police department enforces it. I understand a lot of it is complaint-based, but that is part of the responsibility of the police department, and they would enforce the parking on one side or the other. And residents calling in saying, hey, they're parking on both sides or the wrong side of the street or whatever. But correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how it would work. The FPD would enforce it.
You're absolutely correct by definition. The reality is somewhat different because we, like all communities, don't have enough police officers. And those times we get complaints, which is constant on speeding, we do our best to enforce it, and we do have a traffic division that does put officers on the streets that we can. But typically, because of the call volume and the number of police officers that we have, they'll do traffic enforcement for maybe 45 minutes, and then because of staffing situations and the number of coppers we have, they're off onto a call, and that's it for the rest of the day. So that's why I say, who's going to enforce it?
Yeah. Anecdotally, on a couple of occasions in my own neighborhood, I've reached out through either my alders directly to the police department, and they have come out, had presence, and it's had an effect. So I think that our police department is well up to that task.
It's good that you're optimistic.
Realistic.
Nah, I get the realist, you get the optimist. Anyway, okay. I don't have an issue with any of that, and I forgot what I was going to say. So you're all.
I yield.
167 miles of roads. So, Commissioner, I'm going to get you the map that I put out every winter on the first snowstorm of what aren't city streets, and that'll help you with that. Anybody else on UDO? Commissioner Haley?
Things here. Generally nice, well done. I'll just click through them real fast. Page 2 of 16, I'm sorry, Jeff, this is section 8. H, plats abutting a lake or a stream references meander lines. I'm not sure that City of Franklin has delineated all meander lines on streams and lakes. So that's probably just the wrong choice of words. It's a surveying thing. So
Glad you know about it.
the meander line, they have to be created, drawn, and recorded. So they just need to come up with the right words for that. I understand what they're trying to say. Same thing in J, large lots, that's just wrong. Where lots are created of a size larger than the minimum lot size required, and it goes on. If they're larger than the minimum, they're compliant. What we want to do is define a top end in that, I believe. So if it's like larger by more than 2%, you following me?
Yeah, good point.
Several places in here, there's a tendency to use vagaries, vague words, 15803B. And to the most advantageous development of adjoining areas. We got to define those or get them out of there. We're trying to simplify. You following where that is? And there's many of them in here, but we all think we know what most advantageous development of adjoining areas means, but I could see us arguing that for days. Yeah, there you go. And if it's going to be most advantageous, we should at least say to who. What are the criteria? I'm sorry, I'm still in 15803-5, proposed streets. There's got to be a better choice of words than in the opinion of the Plan Commission, by action of the Plan Commission. On 7, streams or lake shores shall have a minimum width of 60 feet of public access platted. I'm jumping to page 5 of 16. G, excessive street right-of-way length. I think if we're going to get into that battle, it should be as determined by the city planner and city engineer, that there should be concurrence rather than one or the other. And what do you do if there's a difference of opinion? And then that sentence ends with shall be avoided. Again, what does avoided mean? Be prohibited. Just, what does that mean? Again, I'm on 7 of 16 now. Section 1, maximum block length or other factors necessitate an alternative design. I think we can be more specific than that. I like the use of the graphics here, but this one on 7 of 16, we should label the width and the length. They're labeled A and B, and A is in the text, B is not. Page 8 of 16, 4C. Again, we've got an every effort shall be made by the subdivider or condominium developer to preserve and protect any active or planned septic field areas from damage. That's not an if. If the septic field is damaged, it's dead. You can't use it. So somehow we have to reinforce to people. Yes, if you have a platted, an approved septic location that you're going to be using, you're not allowed to have any construction traffic on the downslope side of it. That's state. So to just say that it should be discouraged, what you're going to do is you're going to have a developer who developed and can't build on that approved septic location. Every effort. I go to page 9 of 16, that nice chart on the bottom, and I read it 5 times. I'm not quite clear what the note on the bottom of the chart that says the paving width shall include required bicycle lanes. So I'm assuming it means if there's bicycle lanes are required, the paving width, again, let's clean that one up.
Okay.
Somebody wants to explain it to me, that's fine, but I couldn't get it. Page 10 of 16 on Again, nice chart, but we've got 4 headings, 4 symbols, and only 2 of them are utilized. So B and C don't need to be there. And might it not just be simpler to write on the chart rather than a dot or a triangle, just goes both or required? Then I'm thinking about ease of use and people reading through this. So there are no Bs or Cs on this particular chart, but we're keying them out. You probably just put the words in there. I go to 11 of 16. Under A1, extent of required installation of lateral sewers. The Plan Commission shall require the installation of sewer laterals to the street lot line. That's just a city requirement. Why, I don't know why that's attributed to the Plan Commission. It would say something to the effect of shall be installed to the street lot line. On 13 of 16, under E, the density bonus, I'm a little bit leery about number 6, other as approved by the zoning administrator. I know we've got to make decisions somehow, but other is vague enough. And I think with that, I can leave you alone. Yes, with the general notation that avoid vagaries.
Well, we're going to have a kick at this cat again. Ms. Kent, I did blast through that note. That was a letter that was sent out at the request of the alderman. So I'll go back to my original. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll revisit this when?
In 2 weeks.
Okay. Anything else on this matter? Motion to adjourn. A little slow. Hogan and Haley, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.